Food and Wine Insider is a weekly look at a $1.5 trillion industry touching every American. Devoted to the business of purveying food and decanting wines, Food and Wine Radio is a unique program highlighting not food recipes or wine vintages, but how to make a profit while satisfying America's palates. Visit us at foodandwineinsider.com.
Welcome to today's special edition of Food and Wine Insider. This is the first program of the new year, and we thought we'd sit down with Anne and with Kate Newlin to talk about what's happening in the world of food and wine. And we're going to start with a series of questions. Kate Newlin, as you all know, is one of the foremost consultants in the food industry. She's been all over the media, and we're really happy to have her. And as an audience, you all know about Ann Daw. She's the immediate past president of the Specialty Food Association. She's been a ranking C-level executive with major food companies, and she has been carrying this program for the last year. We're also happy to announce that starting with this program, Anne will be doing it alone, with me acting as producer. It's going to make for, I think, a much more effective program. Oh, and by the way, I should introduce myself. It's Don Mazzella. I was co-host with Anne last year, and look forward to stepping back and being the producer only. Kate Newlin, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Don. It's great to be here with you and Ann.
We're happy to have you. And Ann, it's so good that you'll be carrying on this program alone. I think it's going to be a much more informative program.
Well, I still can't do it without you, Don, so I look forward to our working together into the new year.
Well, we've looked at the past. Now let's look for the future. And I'm going to start by asking our guest, Kate Newlin, what do you see as the major trends in food and wine in the coming year?
I think probably there are three that we're tracking, one of which is the urgency of discovery and therefore a movement away from same old, different day, but through a movement away from predictable, well-known brands and into a desire for fresh, not in the sense of fresh food, but in the sense of a fresh tastes and fresh ideas and exciting adventures that can be sparked by culinary experience. I think we're also seeing a movement towards what I would think of as alternative proteins, so plant proteins, things like that. A desire to move away from or movement more legitimately into a vegan world, so that there's I watch it through my daughter and her friends, the number of young people who really do not want to eat meat of any kind, and therefore, but still need protein. So I think we're going to see on the big manufacturing side as well as the smaller spaces. And then I think in the sense of retail experience, the grocery store experience is one that has kind of lingered far longer than I would have anticipated, with direct delivery of foods like here in New York, Fresh Direct. But now I think with Amazon Fresh, all of those opportunity areas of just not going into a grocery store again, I think is going to change the business dramatically. And now I think we're going to get to critical mass on that. So whatever products are being sold through conventional retail are going to have to earn their way into the grocery carts, the virtual grocery carts.
Well, and what would you like to add to Kate's comments?
I think the things that Kate highlighted, and they are really the three main ones. The whole area of discovery, I think, is absolutely paramount. We were interviewing a gentleman from eMeals, and they give people ideas of what to produce, what to have for dinner, and they do that on a weekly basis with their customers. The customer actually picks up the ingredients for the meal, but they give them the idea. And I think there's always this desire to, what's for dinner tonight? Let's do something different. Let's kind of mash it up a bit. And I think that's really important, because I think people really enjoy food, and they really want to have that comfort around food and that experience around food. And the same old doesn't do it. I totally agree on alternate proteins. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of things done with vegetables that we haven't seen in the past. Cauliflower as mashed up in like mashed potatoes. I think we're seeing cabbage is going to replace starches as well. We're seeing cabbage leaf enchiladas, cabbage chips, cabbage lasagna. I think there's tremendous influence from kids on this. They tend not to want to eat animal protein and are searching for more exciting alternatives in the plant-based area. And I think retail is definitely up for a shake-up. Amazon's purchase of Whole Foods really is going to change the rules. I was really surprised. We just had a brand new ShopRite built in our town, and I went in expecting sort of a whole different experience in the store. Sort of this sense of, entice me with fresh foods, entice me with, the bakery. And when you walk in, you're essentially having to go through the checkout just to get to the aisles. And I was like, wow, they don't get it. The first thing you see is people trying to check out instead of, being, and the bakery was way off in one area. And it was just almost disappointing to me. So I was like, you have to make the retail experience an experience, not just, oh my God, I just want to get there. I want to get in and out as soon as possible. You want people to really enjoy going there and provide them different opportunities to experience food in different forms, or, maybe a sushi bar and so on. And if the supermarkets don't wake up to that, they certainly are going to be left in the lurch, especially with companies like Amazon and even Walmart. All the pickup services now, they're going to start determining what consumers are going to choose in terms of food. So
that's right.
I would say it's those main ones. There's one I think that's also coming that a little bit more difficult to talk about, and I think it's the whole area of cannabis, and it's sort of entering the food sphere. People take it to calm their nerves and reduce anxiety, and I think people are still looking for foods that help them, whether it's gluten-free, whether it's you have diabetes. This is a new one. I think our anxiety level in the U.S. is probably at an all-time high, some self-inflicted, I suppose. And they're looking for things that can alleviate, make them feel good, And I think that food has a great place to play in terms of how consumers feel.
It's kind of a redefinition of comfort food, you're suggesting.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think that may be the case.
Well, I prefer comfort food, plate of spaghetti, but that's me. It's interesting you mentioned that, because we just got an email across our desk yesterday that they at the National Retail Show at the Javits Center on the 15th of January, they have built a virtual store that is that uses closed-circuit cameras and automated tellers. They've built a complete store, a grocery store, to demonstrate the store of the future. And I, for one, am looking forward to going there and seeing this store. But let's explore this a little bit further. You know, you've thrown something at me, protein foods. Can you give some examples, Anne, of protein foods that substitute foods?
Yeah, I think, people, if you combine grains and beans, you get a complex carbohydrate, you get protein, and I think that's what we're seeing, especially with the young people, that they really desire to eat a different way. And I don't think it has anything to do with digestive systems. I think it may have to do as much with how they feel about, eating meat. But yeah, I think that you can replace it, but it requires really being intelligent about the types of combinations of your grains, your beans, your vegetables that you're doing so that you are getting protein, because, the body needs protein. There's, we even see in the milk substitute business, whether it's from soy or nuts, there's a lot of discussion about, is it as good for you as milk from a cow? And yet, there's protein in milk as well. So I think it's going to be here. I think, we see it. I think I even read somewhere that White Castle had a vegan burger or something. And so it's out there. It's something that people are really interested in. And the more people improve the flavor, I remember when, a bazillion years ago when microwaves came out, you couldn't produce anything good in a microwave. It just came out mushy. It came out awful. It didn't come out baked. It didn't come out crunchy. It didn't come out all the ways in which. But look how far it's gotten, how far it's improved. And I think that's what will happen. If there's interest in it, I think the manufacturers will continue to produce some really high quality recipes that are delightful, that taste great. I think initially people felt like, oh my God, this is like bland food. It's, I have to suffer through this. You don't have to suffer through it anymore. They come in with wonderful combinations, wonderful taste profiles. And at the end of the day, food, number one, is all about taste. So it's got to really taste good to make you want to eat it over and over again.
But I think we're seeing this shift as big manufacturers start to notice this consumer demand, right? So I read an investor report the other day. Tyson is rebranding itself or repositioning itself as a protein company instead of a meat company, and also General Foods is investing big time in alternative sources of protein and uses of plants. So I think as you see big manufacturing enter into the process, and it's an acknowledgement, one, that there's a market there, but it also says what you're saying, and that the taste will follow, because you can't sell foods that don't taste good very long. And I think that's what we'll be seeing, is that there will be viable, defensible, delicious alternatives.
Well, on that note, Kate, let me ask you this question. We're talking protein foods. What are the categories that will involve protein foods? I mean, is it beans? Is it what? What do you mean by that? Can you go a little deeper into depth of that?
I think it's alternative sources of protein. So in this case, what I'm talking about are plants. Now, Anne probably has a better understanding of which plants work well, but what it's going to end up being are defensible burgers, right? Like hot dogs that don't make you worried about what you're ingesting. It's the consumer benefit is going to be no trade-off in taste, and a great moral superiority.
You want to comment on that, Anne?
Yeah, I think there are, there's also, your root vegetables, your yams, your parsnips, your jicama, cassava. These they bring such great characteristics to the dinner table, and if you combine them well with, you look at your lentils, you look at your beans. There's just so much better taste that can be had by certain combinations, and I think it's a really exciting time to actually not create something that's not familiar, but to say, hey, how do instead of saying I don't want to eat meat, I think what people are saying is I want to eat differently. I want to eat things that I really enjoy eating, and yet I still want to be sure that I'm getting, whether it's your vitamin A or your D, making sure that you're getting your carbohydrates, make sure that you're getting your proteins. You have to be conscious of that, but I think what they're looking for is a different way to eat, a different way to enjoy food, and that makes you feel good. It makes you feel good, and it makes you enjoy food more.
Well, on that note, I'll go back to Kate. I read a couple of days ago that what has really been revitalized over the last 2 years have been frozen foods. Could you comment on that?
I think frozen foods and, interestingly, canned foods are the undersung heroes of the vegetable and convenience markets, because both in frozen and in canning, you're really much closer to farm to table than you are by transporting fresh, and you have no trade-off done right. You have no trade-off in the nutritional values. So I think as consumers begin to, there's going to be 1 or 2 nights a week that they'll use a meal kit, but there are going to be other nights when they just need food on the table that tastes good and provides a nutritional component. I think we're seeing that the bias towards convenience, coupled with an understanding of nutritional benefits, kind of conspires towards frozen. And just as Anne was saying about the microwave, freezing technology has advanced to a place where you don't have the trade-offs that you once did. So I think that the technology moves us forward. The kind of bias towards convenience moves us forward in these directions, and there are certain benefits that accrue in the world of frozen that just can't be overstated.
Anne, would you like to add to that comment?
Yeah, I many years ago I worked in the Bird's Eye division, and I was also always shocked that people didn't understand that the way frozen works is basically you're getting the product from the field, and within 24 hours you're blanching, which means just a little bit of salt, and you're freezing. And in fact, it's a very fresh product. And I think people just don't understand that. They think that even when you're taking frozen vegetables out, that you actually have to cook them. All you're really having to do is heat them. If you cook them, you're really taking all the nutrients out of them and overdoing it. And I do think there have been, oh my goodness, tremendous. Whether it's baking, the bakery products that are coming out of frozen, or the appetizer products, you're getting products that really have less artificial and preservatives in them, because frozen basically is a preservation system, just like canning is a preservation system. And you're getting products that come out of the oven flaky. They come out tasting. I mean, pizza, which is, I don't know how many billion-dollar category. Frozen pizza is an enormous category of food. And if people didn't like what was coming out of the freezer, they certainly have lots of options for, to go to their local pizzeria and get a pizza. So I think that's kind of the test of time, is if you can make a really great frozen pizza, is it really competing with the ability to get it fresh? And it's changed tremendously.
We're talking with Kate Newlin, nationally known food consultant. We're also talking with Ann Dow, the host of Food and Wine Insider. We're talking about 2019 and what it means for the food and wine industry. I'm going to go back to Kate and ask a question. Ann brought up pizza, which was what I was just about to bring up, because there was a Hallmark movie last week in which the heroine says, well, pizza has all the basic food groups that you need. And she was justifying ordering pizza out rather than cooking. In my lifetime, pizza has gone. I know a cousin of mine opened the first pizzeria in Denver in 1960, and now they're on every corner. It's an indication of food categories grow. But what do you think will be the food category that most generates in the next year?
Well, I think if I said earlier the notion of discovery, I think that has to be the category. In other words, if it's not new to you, in the sense of, yes, I go to a Chinese, or I have my Grubhub standard where I get my sushi, those kinds of things. What the question for all manufacturers and retailers and food people and wine people is going to be, what do you offer that encourages a person to leave home? You can see that there are decreasing reasons to leave home, Grubhub being an essential one, but also home delivery of food, home delivery of everything. So what would you leave home for? And it's not going to be for things that you can get as good at home. So I think the growth industry, rather than being, oh gosh, it's going to be Yucatan Peninsula chips, it's the notion of this is an experience that I can't replicate at home. And that's going to be what meets the new torture test, which is what can you do that encourages a human being to leave their Grubhub infused streaming surround sound of their home, that tremendous comfort. They're working from home, they're living at home, they're doing everything at home. What is worth leaving home for? And that becomes the question. And it is going to be what I think of as discovery experiences, things that people are willing to talk about, tell you have to go try this, things that spark excitement and word of mouth, and literally propel you out of the home. So it's going to be, I think, an exploration and an exponential increase of things we've never heard of. As a set point.
And what are your thoughts?
I as Kate was speaking, I was also thinking about what's going on in bars, because I see there's so much experimentation and exploration going on with drinks. It's not
right.
just about having, your bourbon on the rocks, so that seems to be, there's an appeal to that. But all these combinations of things, combinations of adding, fruit or juices to the vodka and making different sweeter drinks, and there's this whole, it's the whole mixology that's going on in, and alcohol is very intriguing to me, because it's just not about, I get the vodka straight up or I get a bourbon straight up. No, I think the younger generation is looking for different tastes, different experience. It's not just about the alcohol. And you also see it in wines. You see wines where it's a combination of different grapes. It's not just a Cabernet, but it could be a blend. Rosé, which was, considered, how could you possibly order a rosé? Today, it's very popular to have a rosé wine. So I think this notion of experimentation and experience is also showing up in the spirits category in terms of what the consumer wants and how they want to even enjoy. And they go out for that. They go out to enjoy a drink or to have, some kind of, I hope their social system isn't just online. Because I think at the end of the day, people like to be with people, and there's different ways to do that, whether it's your family at a familiar restaurant, and that feels good because it's your restaurant, it's your, the owners and that kind of thing, or it's in a bar situation where it's just enjoying the company of friends and obviously being responsible in terms of the drinking, but also experimenting in that venue as well.
Well, you brought up restaurants, so my next question will be, restaurants are under terrific pressure. City governments and state governments are raising the minimum wage. There is a shortage of labor. What do you think are the issues facing the restaurant industry today that you think will manifest themselves in 2019? And either one of you can.
Kate, do you have a perspective?
Yes,
I
definitely have a perspective, which is we're in a full employment economy, essentially, and a capitalist society. This is supply and demand, and therefore the wages should rise, and they should be made available, sufficient for a living wage. And I think that's the joy of a capitalist system, is that supply and does respond to demand, and wages will have to rise. And I think that's not a bad thing. I think that's a good thing, because then as people make more money, they're able to actually go spend money and save money and do all sorts of lovely community-enhancing activities. So I think it means an entree may cost $1 more, or a drink may cost $1 more, and that's a fair part of participating in society. And I think while we're in a full employment and in an expanding economy, we should all allow everybody to benefit from it. I think there's when the downturn comes, then that's when we see pressure on prices that make it really quite a bit more challenging. But again, that's the way capitalism works. So I think the worry that I have, frankly, and is if we're in a discovery era where it's the reasons that we want to go to these places is to experiment and is to find new tastes and have things worth talking to our friends about and sharing with our friends, is that you then get into a place where the economics support franchise brands. And I mean, if you've been in New York City and you walk around certain neighborhoods, it is like a friend of mine said, it's like being on Route 9 in New Jersey. It's here's a Dunkin' Donuts, and here's a McDonald's, and here's a Burger King, and here's a like it just the economics that work pretty pervasively are those of a franchise model that are less that are more impervious to the ups and downs of supply and demand. People always want a donut and a cup of coffee. So I think there's a huge economic story that is baked into this, but I think there's also a commoditization of taste that is also baked into it, and takes you out of that discovery zone, takes you out of the place where you're able to understand a curated sense of why this coffee is different than that coffee, or why there's an esotericism that is cost agnostic. That's the high end of the market, and then there is the commoditization of taste. That's the low end. But I think both have their place, and workers need to be paid fairly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more, Kate. I think it's different for like high-end restaurants versus, as you say, your Dunkin' Donuts and I keep thinking back to Starbucks in terms of what they do to create the experience. It's really not coffee. I mean, they sell a lot of actually products with milk in them, and chai and so on. And this notion of always sort of coming in with a new flavor. My daughter came home the other day and she said, "Oh, Mom, they've got this chai eggnog iced latte, and I had to try it." And you see, it's just there's the experimentation going on and the experiencing of different flavors. And if they like it, they'll go back and have it again, or they'll go on to the next new thing. I think with high-end restaurants, it's more they have to really keep inventing and reinventing their menus so that it remains exciting, it remains something that people want to try, they hadn't thought about. Oh, here's a new thing, and it's using some kind of unique yam, because at the end of the day, people should be paid a fair wage, and that's a cost of doing business, and waste is something that all restaurants pay an extraordinary amount of attention to be sure that the raw ingredients are used to their maximum capabilities. So it's really being smart about how you run the business, and I think it's always trying to reinvent yourself and say it's not about having the same old all the time, though you should have certain things that your place is really known for that are signature dishes, but also bringing that certain excitement to the locale.
Well, the recent period of recession we went through seemed to educate the American people to be a little bit price conscious. Do you think that that's going to continue, or that the prosperity will allow them to be more experimental and willing to pay more?
My point is that they are willing to pay more for something worth talking about, worth experiencing, worth something that is fresh and new. They're less willing to pay more for the same old, which I think is there are a couple of factors here. One is that as we become a more urban population, we're living more in apartments. There's less room for storage of commodities. There's less willingness to drive to Sam's Club and places like that to store up on things. And these new apartment buildings in urban centers like in New York, very soon they're going to have Pepsi and Coke spigots in the apartment, right, where it'll be just delivered en masse, and you'll turn on a faucet and out will come your Diet Coke or your Diet Pepsi, whatever you specified. So things are going to lock and load, almost like those dances where you lose the chair. It's Amazon will be delivering these kinds of products, not those. Walmart will be loading these products in your car, not those. You're going to see a number of most grocery and drug already have one store brand. I think they move now to 2 or more, but at least 2, one higher, one lower, basic and enhanced versions. I think that the dance will stop soon. The music will stop, and there will be a finite number of brands, and those prices will be commoditized because of what brands are. They promise you the same experience. It's always going to be Oreos, and I think that becomes a price, a trip to the bottom. That becomes the price sensitive. I think where people are willing to invest money is in experiences we're talking about and telling people about things that help us be social. We are social animals, as Ann points out, but we have a decreasing way of experiencing that. I interviewed Howard Schultz one time for one of the books and said, I thought it was a phenomenon that people went to Starbucks for socialization, for the ability to be with other people. And he said, yes, I know they always say that, but we have the videotapes to prove it, that they actually don't talk to anybody in here but the barista, and that's just to place the order. It's more the sight of other people that helps him feel social. I think movies are an experience like that, when you're in the dark and you're with strangers, but you're having a shared experience. I think there's decreasing opportunities to be social, to be authentically social, to be talking to one another and sharing each other's experiences, and therefore the things that we're willing to pay for are things that facilitate that. As we lose our ability to express ourselves in meaningful human terms, the kinds of experiences that help us do that, the great dining experiences, the things where we have never had anything like this before, that make us want to talk, are catalytic to conversation, are the ones that we want to invest in, time and money.
I think to add on to that, I would go to talk about seniors, and one of the more pressing concerns, not just about, we have millions of seniors who are very poor, and they're on fixed incomes, or they lost a job, so they're younger seniors in that respect. But as people get older, one of the key issues is isolation, is not being able to leave home, is not being able to be social, is not seeing other people. And I think that's going to have a lot of influence on even what happens in food, and whether it's delivery or whether it's, how do you bring the seniors to their shopping experience is a problem, I think, that really is going to get bigger and bigger, because isolation leads to a lot of negative things, a lot of problems, and a lot of sadness, and even just visiting your neighbor who happens to be a senior is kind of an important thing to do to make them feel like they're still part of the community. And how people behave in that respect, I think, is going to be very important.
I couldn't agree with you more. Not to put a damper on it, but one of my first assignments as a reporter was to go to a home where a woman had opened up her freezer and climbed in and left a note that no one had talked to her in a month and a half. It left a profound effect on a 21-year-old reporter, an older woman. But we are talking with Kate Newlin, nationally known consultant, and Ann Daw. And I'm going to point out something. Would not, especially in rural areas, the idea of delivery by automated cars or self-driving cars be one way of beginning this process of automated deliveries?
For sure, or as Amazon would have it, drone delivery. I think the economic model of retail begins a pretty fast decline, and we've watched it, as I think last year something like 200 retailers went out of business, declared bankruptcy. Major names. We're watching others kind of on the ropes this year. So it's as the economic engine shifts to having warehouses and home delivery, it no longer makes sense to pay rent on huge big box stores or malls. It stops making economic sense. It can't be sustained. And then where will that hit? It will hit the rural areas as quickly as the urban areas. It'll just be worse in rural areas because it's harder to have that home delivery alternative. So what you're suggesting, Don, is there a mechanism for automatic delivery over large stretches of land that are not united by conventional kinds of means of transportation, no subways, no buses? I think there will have to be, just the way there's a special dispensation for rural area medical services, getting actual personal requirements to rural and particularly aging, as Ann points out, as an aging demographic, will be important. It will be very difficult to make money at it. So that's going to be a role for nonprofits or government or civic concerns to figure that out, because it's as we all know, the most expensive thing you can do in life is ship liquids over land. How do you get things to people that are dispersed across a geography?
Anne, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think what may happen, maybe this is a hope, is that communities come together, that neighbors get to know neighbors again, that people get to care about one another again, and that they support one another again. Because that people being isolated in that way that they don't even know their neighbors, or they don't spend time being social is not going to be healthy for the community. So I think it's going to be, how does the community react? How do people care about one another in a way that says, hey, I'll take you to the store, or let me go pick that up for you, or let me help you. And there are so many nonprofits. I suspect there may be more nonprofits than there are for-profit companies out there these days, that are just trying to do good and trying to make sure that everyone is cared for. And there's a lot of good work going on out there. I think it's very underground in terms of support and helping people, and for people to know that there's someone to turn to. Because I'm not even sure it's your doctor anymore. I think it may ultimately be your neighbor.
It's ironic. I don't know if you saw, but 2 days ago, the Wall Street Journal talked exactly about that subject involving medical care in rural areas. And they said exactly what you said. Neighbor has to help neighbor. And nonprofits.
Yeah. I like Kate. What do you think are some new flavors on the horizon?
Not my core competency, I'm afraid. I know new flavors as a category, as an essential demand is important, but I don't know. I would defer to you on that. And it's as I've said, it's the of discovery that is important. I think manufacturers and marketers have to be mining that, very, very carefully. But that's tragically not my core competency.
We should talk about franchising. What do you think are going to be the trends in food franchising?
Well, I think, right, I'm always going to think this, is that startup ideas, if they're developed by people knowledgeable about franchising, so you've got to have the core business competence built in. But then, does the world need another Dunkin' Donuts franchise? Does it need another McDonald's? Or is there something else, like what Starbucks was 20 years ago, something that entices us, something that excites us, something that we want to talk about? There's no bragging rights about going to get a cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, or there's almost I want to say a reverse kind of an embarrassment over acknowledging that you've gone to some of these places. It's the commoditization of an experience where there's they've been trained to be friendly and to be able to promote this drink tonight. It's manufactured experience, and it works. Obviously it works. But I think the next phase is in the figuring out unmet needs, unmet experiential needs, and the market would migrate to that. You don't need an Olive Garden 1,000-calorie Caesar salad. You need what do you need? What is that you're almost getting? And I think there's convenience, there's predictability, there's laminated menus, so that you get why it works. But I think there's an unmet need in the replicatable food experience, but it has to have a freshness to it, a discovery element to it. Otherwise, it's commoditized relatively quickly.
Anne, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think Kate's talked quite a bit earlier about vegan and veganism and that kind of thing, and I could see a franchises growing up in that area. This notion of really fresh food, really maybe it's small bites. It's very interesting to watch food trucks and watch what food trucks bring to the consumer in these sort of small bites, or actually sometimes big bites. And, it's really tends to be very wholesome and good, and it's not all just, macaroni and cheese or that sort of thing. I think that the vegan, I could see franchises growing up in that, where people feel like, wow, I come in, I get something really fresh, it's really convenient. I can pop in and grab and go, because I think convenience continues to be a huge mantra for people. They have to have it convenient. They have to be able to grab and go, and yet they want something that they can feel good about having put in their bodies.
I think that's spot on.
The struggle.
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
No, as you're talking, Ann, I'm thinking a hybrid between the truck approach and a standalone embedded store franchise so almost a pop-up food moment that would exist, and you'd be encouraged to go to it, and then the tent would fold and it would go somewhere else, right? So it would be a franchise model that was in transit and able
a mobile franchise model.
yeah,
sure.
I think now it's in Soho, and now it's because I'm in New York, it goes to a different neighborhood, and so that neighborhood gets to discover it, and its menu changes, you'd have a mobile idea that you could constantly be discovered. I think could be a very elegant concept. It would, the staff could stay the same. Neighborhood to neighborhood, they would move, but the requirements for a kitchen, the pop-up issue, would have to be dealt with by some very savvy real estate people. But I think that there's a concept there.
Well, when I was growing up, there was a man who came around with his horse and wagon and sold fruit in my neighborhood, fruits and vegetables and other stuff. Mm-hmm. Everything old, everything new is everything old is new again. Yep. We're coming right around to it.
Well, we have a fruit guy on our corner and the one on the corner 2 blocks from here, and it's my daughter's grown up with that's the fruit guy, but he sets up his shop every morning on the street with fresh fruits and vegetables. So it's obviously there's a business behind it because the truck comes and delivers. But it's there's something to it. It does feel fresh and discoverable.
Well, we have about 3 minutes left. I'll start with you, Kate. Would you summarize and say what are 2 or 3 things that you think are really important for people within the industry to know about 2019?
Well, I think plant protein. I think that veganism is with us and growing, and some of the big manufacturers are already investing in ways that need to be paid attention to. It's not going away, and there's an opportunity there. I think, convenience will almost always trump, and you have to really be sure to create products that are worth crossing the street for, that are worth discovering, because the discovery piece of it is where the margin is, where the excitement is, what people need. I think that's incredibly important. And I think to understand that there is no store of the future, notwithstanding what's going to be done at the Javits Center, Don. There is no store of the future. And it would be very, very good for people to begin to deal with that reality now before it's absolutely true, and figure out if they didn't have a retail footprint, how would they tell their story? How would they be essential to consumers? Because if you can solve for that, your essentiality, then you're retail agnostic. You would exist no matter what, and that gives you a lot of breathing room as this kind of transition happens. I think the story that Ann told about going into a brand new ShopRite is tragic. It's marketing to a world that perhaps once existed, where people wanted to go into a grocery store and be confronted by the checkout counter first, but that world is fast disappearing, and some of these manufacturers and many of these retailers are going to be left high and dry.
Kate, before going further, your website, people want to get in touch with you?
Kate, Kate, and then Newlin .com. And my email is kate@katenewlin.com, cleverly enough.
And your thoughts, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think the one thing, because I agree with everything that Kate said, I would say what I think is really changing is the whole area of artificial intelligence and how that is predicting behavior and flavor trends. I think that I find it fascinating how data and behavior, watching behavior, looking at, there's different companies out there that are helping manufacturers actually think about that and think about their menu development or think about their new products. And I think we're right at the front of what's going on artificial intelligence and how that's going to start predicting the future. My baseball analogy is sort of like the analytics that are now sort of driving how people make decisions in baseball. I think analytics are going to continue to drive how analytics are used to understand behavior and then predict what's coming. I think if the election taught us anything, it's you've got to be really smart about understanding consumer behavior.
On that note, I want to thank Kate Newlin and Daw for a fascinating hour. A link to Kate Newlin will be on foodandwineinsider.com tonight, where you can hear this and every other past and future program. And, by the way, you can tell us guests you'd like to hear. Kate and Ann, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Kate, I really enjoyed it.
Me too.
Have a wonderful holiday.
You too, Ann.
To be successful, most restaurant owners require extra capital from time to time. When you need funding to renovate, buy equipment, or manage cash flow, you don't have time to track down financial statements or wait weeks for a decision. That's where Kabbage can help. Kabbage gives small businesses access to a line of credit of up to $200,000. Apply online and you'll get a decision right away. Since Kabbage is a line of credit, you can take the exact amount you need. You never have to reapply to take additional loans, and you'll only pay for the funds you use. Kabbage has helped more than 230,000 businesses from every industry, and with $4 billion in funding, Kabbage is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau and was named the Forbes Top 100 Companies twice in a row. Check out Kabbage at kabbagewithak.com/foodandwine, and you'll get a $50 gift card when you qualify. That's kabbage.com/foodandwine.
Line of credit is subject to credit approval. See terms and conditions. All Kabbage business loans are issued by Celtic Bank, a Utah-chartered industrial bank, member FDIC.
You are listening to Ann Daw and Don Mazzella, and the program is Food and Wine Insider.
And you and I both attended the just completed Fancy Food Show. You were the past president of the Specialty Food Association. What did you notice about the show this year that you would like to pass on to our audience? I'm going to give you a way out question. Do you ever think that marijuana and marijuana products will be part of the Specialty Food Show in the future?
You know, I think there are not marijuana specifically, but the ingredients that's in, what is it, cannabidiol, or and I think it's already showing up in products. So yeah, I do think it will be part of the future. I think it's a question of what's food versus what is drug. And so I think it's a question of what properties from the cannabis are helpful from a food standpoint, not necessarily from a drug standpoint, because I think there's always a fine line between food and drug. I know years ago, I forget what big cereal maker had a product that had psyllium in it. And, you know, the issue with food is if you overeat food, the one thing that you get is you get overweight, right? But it shouldn't change your body physiologically. Well, they came out with a cereal that had psyllium in it. And if you ate too much of the cereal, it actually changed your body physiologically. And so therefore they actually had to pull it off the market because it really wasn't food anymore. So I think it's a balance of those things. I think we will see it. I think it's already here. I think there are products that are out there. I think it's a question of what benefit is the product providing that still says it's food related, not drug related.
You've been listening to Food and Wine Insider with Ann Daw and Don Mazzella. Want to join us on a future show? Contact us at foodandwineinsider.com. Until next time, have a passion for food, wine, and profits, and think of our program, Food and Wine Insider.